I think coming from the alt-cert background and not going through a traditional education program in college, I really feel like my best attribute is my ability to connect with the kids, and that my sort of, Renaissance background of sports and theater and music and singing and art and I think all those things, it makes it so that I can connect with a lot of different kinds of kid.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success. We all remember the first time we saw one of our teachers outside of school. Our mouths hung open as ontological shock set in. They have a life outside the school? My next guest students moved from shock to awe when they found out that he not only leaves campus, but he is also in a band. He's the lead singer of the alternative rock band Unicorn Wranglers. And today he's going to share how his unusual hobby has helped him better connect and educate his students. Connecting and communicating, rocking and rolling. Joey Truncale, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very truthful introduction, I think. It's very fair.
Isn't it, though? I mean, I remember the first time I saw a teacher outside of school, and she lived on my block. And I was like, you don't live at the school? What is this madness?
I think having parents that were educators sort of broke that for me, where they would be, at our house. I was like, well, this is a little weird, and you're also my teacher.
What is that called in theater? The third wall?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Way past it.
Way past the third wall. It's not broken. It's shattered in this case.
Uh-huh.
So you mentioned you come from a family of educators, and your sister's actually been teaching for 20 years, but you were a little bit of the black sheep because you wanted to do either, wait for it, broadcasting or Broadway.
Yes. Yeah, I think growing up, I love sports. Sometimes I would listen to the sound of music on the way to my sport. So there you go. That's a real... That's a real embarrassing fact about myself. And my parents were both guidance counselors, and my sisters both went into education as well, and they're a little bit older than I am. So yeah, I think that for me, I wanted to do probably anything other than that. And so when I was growing up, I was really into sports and sports broadcasting. And for a minute when I was at Virginia Tech, I double majored in communication and in theater. And that was difficult to do. You kind of getting pulled in both directions. And I kind of figured I didn't want to do the struggling actor route. So instead, I did the struggling broadcaster route. It's not that different. Yeah, exactly. So I was at Virginia Tech, and I did a lot of like the Olympic sports, volleyball, women's soccer. I knew a lot about women's soccer when I was at Virginia Tech because I was calling women's soccer games on ESPN3. Online and stuff like that, which was cool.
That is cool.
And so when I graduated from Virginia Tech, I graduated a semester earlier. My first job was with the Blue Wahoos in Pensacola, which was, I think, maybe their third year, I think, as a minor league team. We had like a little connection that got me down here. And I called baseball over the summer with Tommy Thrall, who's now broadcasting for the Cincinnati Reds, which is very cool. And I loved it, but it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of hard work, and you kind of quickly figured out that you were going to be traveling a lot, and the baseball season ends, and you got to go somewhere different. So I went and was doing women's basketball at Radford University, which is very close to Virginia Tech, where I went to school. And so I did that for a couple years, and, eventually you start to figure out that it's just a hard industry. And as much as I loved it, I kind of wanted something that was going to help me settle down a little bit. And so I always knew in the back of my mind that I liked education, and I liked working with young people. And I had a pretty important experience actually when I was in Pensacola working a volleyball camp with my cousin's wife, who was a teacher at Washington at the time. And it was just, I had almost more fun in that 1 week, than I had the last few years. And I kind of felt like, I think I could do this. I think I have, even if I haven't done that path up until this point, I think I could be pretty successful with it.
So then you did the alternative certification and took the dive and went and taught in the school.
Yes, I went through the START program, did the alternative certification. So that was a multi-year process. And I just got really lucky to get a job at West Florida, in part because they said, "Can you teach theater?" I was like, "Yeah, sure can." I did that for a while.
I feel like I am already, this is cracking me up because I'm already seeing the connections between your varied life experience pre-educator and how that applies in the classroom. Because like as a broadcaster, it's very on your toes, right? You are observing your surroundings and you're calling the plays. And theater, yes, and right, the improv, and you've got all of that going on in a classroom.
I do. I know this sounds very cliche and goofy, but I really do feel like I am putting on a little improv every class period. And every class, every audience is a little different when you think about people because that's a part of being in a show. You're doing 7-8 days a week. You're performing the same role. And technically that's kind of what I'm doing. I teach the same class 4 or 5 times. I teach another class a couple times, but each audience is different. So you have that interaction that's slightly different. And so it does sort of feel that way.
You work out your bits.
I do. Sometimes the bit is perfect on the first go around. And sometimes it's, the third class is like, I got the laugh I was looking for there. No, I think you're exactly right. That's how I did feel that way. Is like I'm combining my theater background, communication, broadcasting, and just my love of educating and being to, influence young people and putting all those together.
I really appreciate the combination of the alternative certification teachers blended with the traditional path teachers, because I feel like those powers combined.
Yeah.
That it is such a powerhouse of a resource in the school system because of everything that you're talking about, all of the outsider advantage that you bring into the classroom. And I think the kids, there's an additional energy there, which actually leads me to my next question. I want to hear when they found out that you were in a band. Tell me about that moment.
So that would have been my second year teaching. I kind of kept it under wraps for a while.
Because you met the band members while working at the Wahoos?
Yes. Yep. The bassist and one of the brothers that started the band was someone I worked with at the Wahoos. So I started doing some stuff kind of tangentially with them around that time. I honestly could not tell you how that conversation came up, that their band versus me being like, well, I can kind of sing, I could do that. And us kind of combining forces in that moment. But when I got back to Pensacola, it took a minute for me to get into it because I was nervous about the idea of being in a band. Because when I had performed in my life, it was a character. I was Will Parker. I wasn't, Joey Truncale. And that was different to be up there and be like, this is you now. So that was a little scary and it took me a minute. And they'll still say I have a little bit of stage fright sometimes. I get a little ornery when I'm a little nervous about something. But so when I got going back with it, I remember I was off. I barely took off when I first started teaching, mostly because I didn't know how to get a sub. I was nervous about having to contact anyone or tell them how to do anything with my class, so I was almost always at school. But my family had come down to visit, and we were going to Disney. So I took the Friday off, and I got a text from one of my bandmates. It was like, "Hey, someone's commenting something from like your class on our Instagram."
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh boy. So it was sort of found out by a couple boys, and they kept it a secret.
Did they really?
They did. So that was impressive. They kept it a secret. They were juniors. Pretty much didn't get out until the next year in the spring. And then the questions just start flooding in, and you're in the middle of talking about The Story of an Hour and Kate Chopin, and someone raises their hand and you're like, yeah, what's up? And they're like, are you in a band? And you're just like, yeah, yep. Doesn't feel like the appropriate time to have that conversation, but yes,
right.
I am.
You're like, maintain leadership, maintain control of the classroom.
And, most of the kids, they are pretty shocked. They're very surprised. They ask you what you do in the band. Then I have to say, well, I'm the lead vocalist. Then they ask the name. Then the Unicorn Wranglers gets a chuckle or two. So there's that element of it. And, some of them are really interested. And then other ones probably have your teacher has something outside of class. This is crazy and ridiculous. And they're probably internally embarrassed about the idea that I could be singing on in a band, or I'm on Apple Music and Spotify and things like that. I think is uncomfortable for them sometimes too.
Oh my gosh. So now that they know, do you feel like it's just managing that knowledge as a distraction, or do you feel like it has a benefit for the classroom?
Well, I think it's funny because every year it's a week-long experience when it gets out, right? Like the seniors now know, but the juniors don't.
Okay.
And then it'll be, mid-October, and you'll get the question. And you'll get that question again in fourth period, and then in sixth period. And then it gets discussed. And, every once in a while, you have to kind of, okay, hey, we've got stuff to do. We got to focus up. But I think coming from the alt-cert background and not going through a traditional education program in college, I really feel like my best attribute is my ability to connect with the kids, and that my sort of, Renaissance background of sports and theater and music and singing and art and I think all those things, it makes it so that I can connect with a lot of different kinds of kid. So it's not just that, oh, I know sports, so I talk to all the jock kids and whatever, or, oh, I like art, so I talk, I really feel like I can connect with a lot of different kinds of students. And so when they find that out, for the most part, I think it's a deepening of our relationship and a recognition that your teacher is a real person that's done other things in their life. And so for the most part, I think it's been a good thing. I was really nervous about it at first. I mean, really, really, when I heard that, they're on the Instagram, I'm like, oh Lord, here we go. I don't want this. But, for the most part, I think it's been very positive.
I love that. And you do have a knack for making those boring topics relevant with your, as you say, Renaissance background. I love the way you word that. That's the best. So I need to know how you connected the Stanley Cup trend to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Please let the people know.
Right. Well, to be fair, I want to give credit to the student who mentioned it. We were talking about being self-reliant. We're talking about individualism and how people sometimes conform. And I was like, can you think of any examples? And my student, Alex, raised his hand. He was like, it's like the Stanley Cup and how all the girls have to have the Stanley Cup now. I'm like, you know what? That's a really good example.
That's excellent.
You're making Ralph Waldo Emerson, who some people find to be a little bit boring. That's a relevant connection. So I'm trying to, like you said, or like I was saying earlier about trying to make every period a little bit of a show. There's elements of that. The last couple weeks that we've been working, there is some subordinate clause indicator words, so you can know where the subordinate clause begins. I know, look, your face tells me that you're frightened that I'm going to give you a grammar test.
Oh my gosh.
I totally understand. That does sound frightening.
It did.
But I've come up with this chant, and I start this chant, and I'm like, here's some of the words that you need to know, and they're going to indicate that we're beginning a subordinate clause. And it starts, and I start talking to them. I'm like, what, which, who, how, that, when, where, whether, why. And then I keep going. I go, what, which, who, how, that, when, where, whether, why. I said, what, which, who. And the kids are either think it's hilarious, or they are so mortified that I'm dancing. I'm literally in this class dancing and chanting and singing. And I'm like, I need you to chant back with me. Because if I'm doing this just for me, this is really embarrassing. I'm not going to stand up here and embarrass myself just because And so I'm chanting, I'm like, you're going to have to do this in the hallway. You're yelling at your friends. You should be chanting what, which, who, how, that, when, where, whether, why. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to associate that with me being a singer in a band, I think there's your connection in the classroom.
I love that so deeply. It sounds like your creativity and your ability to make those connections between traditionally dry subjects and a little bit more fun, trendy, things, pop culture is contagious. Your students are catching it and they're now, becoming that also.
I'm hopeful about that. I try to tell them that more than anything, I want them to be good people when they leave our school district, right? And that they have the education to be able to think critically and make their own choices, but that if we can get them out of here and they have a bit of knowledge and a bit of empathy and, maybe some creative chance as well, that's what we're trying to do, right? And maybe in 10 years when I see them, I tell them all the time, I don't think you're probably going to remember the chant. I don't, but
I bet they do.
But maybe they will. But I'm trying to set them up to have some success for when they leave Escambia County.
I can totally see them at one of your performances. There in the corner, in the back of the convention center, you hear this odd chant, and it's the one that you just did earlier. I can just see it now.
I can just do the chant. We want to hear the chant song.
Oh my gosh, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, if Bobby Bones can make it and sing on stage, he was a radio DJ personality who started a band as a joke, and now he charted. So if he can do it, I mean, you can do it. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is the kids are like, we're going to listen to your band. Like, go ahead. Get those streams up. Let's go. I mean, not in class, but, outside of class, go ahead. You can put it on loop if you want.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. I love that, you're prioritizing fun in your own life is modeling to the kids that, you can inject fun into things that aren't by themselves fun. And you are also injecting the priority of friendships too, because of your bandmates, there's 7 kids among the 7 of you.
Yes.
Under
8 years old.
And you have twin toddlers.
Yes.
Which is bananas. So why make time for the band with everything also wanting your attention?
Yeah. And I would say it has slowed down a smidge.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than a smidge. We are trying to ramp it back up. It was a little bit hectic there when we found out, my wife and I found out we were having twins.
I bet.
I was like, okay, I'm getting pulled in a lot of directions here, literally, figuratively. But, my friendship with Adam and Ian's a teacher in the county as well, Mr. W, for all the elementary school PE classes out there. Our friendship is really more, they're brothers, but I consider them brothers as well. And so our friendship and having something like music and that creative outlet and playing a show. I mean, there really isn't anything like playing a show and doing it well. So yeah, I want to keep that alive because they're my good buddies and we love each other and we want to have a reason to be able to hang out and get together. And what's better than a band?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I spoke with this developmental psychologist once about the evolution of boy friendships, friendships that little boys have, and how as they grow older, they disintegrate. And how if they didn't, how much better society would be. That's the long and the short of it. And so what I love about what you're doing in the classroom and out is that you're modeling the kind of behaviors that will make society better. You're showing to the young women, yes, this is what we want our young men to prioritize, having friendships. And you're showing to the boys that you can love the sound of music while you're driving to baseball practice. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I hope they can see that we're reading a story right now called A Raisin in the Sun, and one of the characters is trying her hand at a bunch of different hobbies. And there's a little bit of a generational gap, and the mom and even the older sister-in-law don't really understand. Why can't you just stick with one thing? And I mentioned that. I said, that's not how we should operate, right? We should try a bunch of different things. And whether that means you both want to play soccer or baseball and be in the musical and be in the orchestra, like your ability to be well-rounded because you've met a bunch of different people, and the people you meet in the football locker room are going to be different than the people you meet backstage at your theater production. And that sounds, again, it sounds so cliche, but I do feel that is so vital, because you're going to meet different kinds of people and you're going to empathize with those people because you've seen someone that's come from a different place from you, a different background, and you've done something together too, right? Whether that's play a sport or create something or make something, and that bonds you together. And so I would hope that they could see that you could both love football and love baseball and also love music and a musical. And they'll probably, if they were listening to this, they'd probably laugh and be like, oh, Miss Truncale, what are you talking about? But I would hope that would maybe through osmosis kind of be imbued in them.
I think so. I think that's how kids learn, is by copying what it is that they see. Mm-hmm. So good thing that you are teaching the kids and being genuine and authentic, because kids have a radar for inauthenticity, don't you think?
I do. I mean, I think when you meet a teacher who's really good at teaching, you can tell right away. Mm-hmm. You just have that sense of the person who has the control of the room, that has the connection with the kids. And we have, West Florida, especially, we have so many of them that are authentic, good people, and that they can have a relationship with the students while also being able to, get down to business when, it has to get done. And I think that's pretty vital in education.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.